Hi everyone, my name is Emily Michael, and I'm here to share a preview of my talk for TudorCon 2026. My topic is the Archaeology of Style, exploring medieval and Renaissance English. This is a topic that I've long been fascinated by as a writer and an English teacher, but I think anybody could be fascinated by it, and I'm hoping that by the end of the talk, you'll understand why I'm obsessed. So, in my talk, we're going to talk about three different kinds of English, basically the three versions of English that preceded the English that we speak today. And I'm going to share practical examples that you may or may not be familiar with. And I will do some recitations in Old English and Middle English, so you'll have to watch the talk to catch those. But I want to talk today about why this topic is interesting to me, and hopefully it can be interesting to you. So, have you ever thought about the difference between two words that seem to mean the same thing but sound very different emotionally to your readers or your listeners, or even to you individually? And I'm talking about words like freedom and liberty. So if you think about the word freedom and the word liberty, they both basically mean the same thing, but one of them may resonate more with you. I'm not going to tell you which one resonates with you, I don't know. But one may sound more down to earth, and the other may sound more lofty or romanticized. Another good example of this is the words fight and battle. So one may sound more down to earth, again, maybe more humble. You can think of it as being more humble, and the other may sound more epic or more romantic in nature. And there's a reason for that. There's a historical reason for that, but you have to watch my talk to figure out what that might be. But it doesn't stop at just pairs of words. It actually is common in what we call triplets, which are groups of three words that all mean the same thing. So a good example of this is the words fire, flame, and conflagration. So just to explain, fire comes to us from the earliest version of English. It's called Anglo-Saxon or Old English. Flame comes to us from an early version of French, and conflagration comes to us from Latin. And we have many examples of these kinds of triplets in our language today, and they all kind of mean the same thing. A fire is the same thing as a conflagration, although to me a conflagration sounds a lot more epic and a lot more terrifying. But the words have a different emotional ring to them, and this is what your English teachers probably called connotation. They have a different maybe street value or a different conversational value. And there's a political and cultural reason for that. And again, you have to watch my talk to figure out what that might be. But there's also a reason why, if you've taken any kind of advanced test in your life, like an SAT or an ACT, or even a GRE test, there's a reason that we tend to see an overabundance of Latin words. And again, that has its roots in the Elizabethan era as well. So what can you expect from my talk? We're going to start with my favorite version of English, which is Old English. This is also called Anglo-Saxon, and that's because it was spoken by Angles and Saxons. There were multiple versions of Old English, but we have one dialect that most scholars are familiar with today, and that's the one we're going to look at. It has three letters that no longer exist in modern English, and it has some amazing and fun sounds, and I will be doing some recitations during my actual presentation, so you have to watch it. Old English is the language of Beowulf, and it was spoken about 1,000 years ago. So why do we care? We care because it's a language that still affects the English that we speak today. And the reason is because many of our most powerful words, the words that we use every day, come from Old English. So words like love, hate, mother, father, sun, moon, these are words that still hang around, very similar to how they would have been pronounced 1,000 years ago. There's actually a slide in my presentation that has a whole list of words that you may recognize. The spellings are going to be weird, but once I teach you how to decode the spellings, you're going to be an Old English pro. Old English is fun, it's fascinating, it's a Germanic language, it's very guttural, and it's really, really cool when you hear it being read aloud. So stay tuned for that. After Old English comes Middle English, and this is the language of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. and it kind of sounds like English being read with a really terrible French accent. So again, I'll be reading some of that for you during my presentation. I will unashamedly say that it's not my favorite. Old English is absolutely my favorite. And what I found when I talk to colleagues is that you always have a preference. There's always the people who are really excited about Middle English, and then there's the people who are really nuts for Old English. So I'm officially in the Old English camp. It's my favorite one of all three languages that we're going to discuss. But I promise I will give Middle English its due because it's really important. It's the bridge between the language of 1,000 years ago and the language of Shakespeare and Queen Elizabeth I. So Middle English is the language, like I said, of Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. It represents a blending of Old English and Old French, and we'll talk about the social and political factors that enabled it to become a thing when you actually watch my talk. And after Middle English, we have the language of Shakespeare. This is called Early Modern English. So it's really common if you ask people, what language did Shakespeare speak? People say, oh, Old English. He wrote in Old English. Well, they are wrong. And I correct people as often as I can on this because, again, Old English is really cool, but it's definitely nothing that Shakespeare would have understood. And most modern English speakers will not be able to understand it without help. But early modern English is much closer to the English that we speak today. And this is why when you pick up a copy of any of Shakespeare's plays or even poems by Wyatt or Surrey, you can actually understand most of the words. There might be some weird words here and there might be some weird spellings, but you can get it. Especially if you go and listen to these texts being read aloud. If you go to a Shakespeare play and they're performing, you're going to be able to understand most of what's being said. It might be weird. You may not get the humor. You might be like, what's the hype? I don't understand. But whether you like it or not is not really the same as whether you understand it. So I have a theory that if we were all dropped into Tudor England, could we communicate with people? I have a theory. You can probably guess what that theory is, but you'll have to watch the talk to figure it out. One thing that's really interesting about Shakespeare's English, and I keep saying Shakespeare just because he's kind of the household name that we all understand, but one thing that's interesting is there's a huge influx of vocabulary from all around the world. This is really a time when the cultural influences from trade from all the merchants that are carrying things from Portugal and Spain and Italy, they're actually affecting the language because they're bringing in words. And English as a language is really, really adaptable. People call it a garbage can language because it can just absorb extra words. So this is a time when we get all kind of crazy words coming in from science and technology, from art and architecture. We get words coming in from trade from around the world. There's even a lot of profanity that comes in during this time because, again, we're starting to see a global society and that's affecting the language. So I called this talk The Archaeology of Style. I'm not out in the yard with a shovel digging up anything, but when we actually start looking at what language used to do and what language used to sound like, we can see why our language is the way that it is today. So when we think about things like the emotional effect of different kinds of words based on where they came from, there's reasons for that. It's not just how we feel. A lot of times when we talk about language or literature, people are like, oh, this is just how I feel. But there's actual historical evidence to support our attitudes about language today. What feels more natural to us? What feels a little bit more distant from us in terms of vocabulary? There's reasons for that. And so these words like fire and flame and conflagration, they are kind of like fossils. And I'm not an archaeologist at all. I'm an English teacher who loves languages. But these words do point backward. And if we look at why they came into the language and how they were used and who used them, then we start to uncover what our modern attitudes towards these words are. And I think that's totally fascinating. It's the kind of thing I could talk about for a really, really long time. But I'm going to try to cover a lot of content in a very brief presentation. And again, you're going to see a lot of examples on the screen of what these languages looked like. You're going to see how things used to be spelled. The spelling is always crazy. It's totally fascinating. And again, if you think about things like the printing press affecting how spelling was standardized, again, everything has a history. These words have a history. They didn't just get dropped from above. we can actually start to understand the world of the Tudors better. So I hope you come to my talk. I hope you decide to attend TudorCon. My talk will be digitally presented, so you can watch it over and over and over, which I hope that you will want to do. But I'm really excited to be part of the program this year, and I'm really excited about this topic. And I hope you enjoy it. And thanks so much for listening today.